Hey guys, welcome back to another PS2 Memories video. Here we are taking a look at a racing game by the name of Classic British Motor Racing, and this game was released for the PlayStation 2 but also on Microsoft Windows PC and the Nintendo Wii in 2008. And the game was published by different developers within different regions, but it was developed mainly within Data Design Interactive. The game consists of a number of different racing events, all using classic British sports cars and coupes that would have been very popular from back in the likes of the early to mid late 60s, 70s, with cars ranging from the likes of the Austin Mini Cooper, Triumph TR6, the Austin Healey 3000 and the Triumph Spitfire, among others. And the game offers up a number of different modes with time trials, even multiplayer, and then a Grand Prix mode where you can race all of the cars in question, and also has a number of different difficulties that you can utilise should you wish to challenge yourself throughout the course of play. Now, the one thing to note with this game, as with a lot of games from these type of developers, that they are a budget style game, as they utilise similar graphics and visual characteristics that you would see a lot of in very similar style of racing games that were also released on the PS2. I have done a lot of previous videos on some of these racing games, so I'll make sure to drop a link to a playlist below in the description so that you can also go and check them out. And the game, for the most part, got mixed to low reviews within the magazines, and it was heavily criticised due to kind of like the standard of the graphics, because the same kind of game engine and the graphics were used in similar and other style games that were also released by the same developers. It kind of felt like that for the most part that they literally just take something from one game and just put it into a new one, add a few models and a few bits and pieces here and there, and then just slap a new name tag on it. And that is why the games usually do be heavily criticised for. But not only that, the game was also slated for the likes of even some of the handling characteristics in the vehicles. Although, even from my own perspective of having spent time playing the game, compared to other racing games that I've played that are also part of this type of game as well, the handling isn't actually too bad. It's not as good as some more mainstream games, but the handling overall is not as twitchy or as fiddly as some of those other games that I've mentioned. So even with the amount of cars that are available, you have access to a number of tracks, all based around the UK. The one thing to note is that the designs of the tracks is another area where it did receive low reviews on, because it mentions that the likes of the designs weren't really that good and that the levels themselves can be quite long. Now, I found it from playing it, the more I started to get into it, the more I started to enjoy it. But I will admit, the tracks can be very, very long, and the one thing that I did find that can probably get annoying for some is that although the music in the game, the soundtrack is quite good and it is very reflective of the time period, and that's what they were trying to aim for, but you find on some of the tracks that they just repeat the same soundtrack over and over and over again, which can definitely throw a lot of people off. So in order to progress through the game, you have to win races on the tracks and make sure that you're placed within the top 3 places in order to, say, unlock all of the other tracks and even the cars in the game so that you can use them. And even in terms of the visual features of the game also does have dynamic weather effects, as when you're racing throughout a track, especially on some of the levels, it will be sunny or like kind of like dull and overcast, but then you will actually see rain starting to appear, and if you go into the likes of the in-car or the bonnet view, you will actually see the rain coming down and hitting off the road. So that in itself is a nice effect to actually have. Now remember that this is a budget game and it shows for the most part, but I found that it wasn't as bad compared to some other games that I have played from similar developers on the system. This one actually was a bit better than most. I found myself actually spending quite a bit of time with it, and the more I played it, the more I actually was getting into it. But I will admit, because of the length of the tracks, and they can be quite long, you found that after a while you'd need to take a break, but then you'd find yourself nearly wanting to go back into it just to finish it. But it's simplistic in its nature in what it's trying to do, and even for the most part with some of the tracks and some areas you do have access to certain shortcuts which can definitely help you with your progression so that you can at least gain somewhat of an advantage. But all in all, not the worst racer on the PS2, but definitely not the best one either. But it is one of those type of games that if you do want to try out something a little bit different and you're interested to know more about these budget type of games that were released on the system, because there was a lot of these type of games that started to crop up, especially through the midpoint and even towards the end of the PlayStation 2's life cycle. You started to see loads of these type of games that's showing up, especially racing games. But if you are interested in them, you can get access to them for fairly cheap. You might be able to find copies of them in a bargain bin for relatively cheap, so if you are interested in them, you can pick them up for a couple of cents, or maybe even like $1 or two here and there, just to see what they're like, and they won't really break the bank. Now, as to say, they're not perfect, but if it is something that you want to try out, there's no harm in having a look at it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this racing game if you have played it yourself. And if so, what do you think of it? Did you enjoy it, or maybe not so much? Or have you played other types of games that are similar to this on the system? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you'd like to see more of these unique style videos where I do provide reviews and gameplay videos of similar style of budget racing games that were also released on the PS2, where I do share my thoughts and experiences with everyone, then make sure to leave a like on the video. Again, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be updated when future videos are released. And also feel free to check out the playlist here on screen of other similar style of racing games that were also released on the system. So be sure to check those videos out, and I will see you all over in the next one.